3, 2, 1. We are live, Ryan.
We're live. Okay. Welcome back to another episode of Mapping It Out with Brian and Kota.
Yeah, 34.
All right. 34. Thanks for sticking with us, guys. So, sticking with our tradition of kind of allocating the different episodes with years. 34 is 6 years from you now? 6 or 7 years?
Yeah, 7.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you're in a better position 7 years than I was at 34. But for me, it was an interesting year because that was 2012 right now. I was 10 years younger than I am now in 2022. So it was 2012. And 2012 was when I sold my half of Forged. That was the first company I started. Well, I started with Mikey Sowers in 2007, and we ran it for 5 years. And I sold my half of it to one of our employees at 5 years in. And it was an interesting time in my life because I felt like I had built something, but I didn't really appreciate it at the time because it was so frustrating. There's so many issues to deal with and so many just normal entrepreneur things. I just didn't know that was normal. There's very few podcasts to listen to, like very few information pieces that were being true and authentic to the entrepreneur experience. So I was super frustrated and doing a lot of bullshit. And I was like, well, fuck, this is annoying and sucks and I don't want to do it anymore. So I ended up leaving. But that's actually a good topic for a podcast today.
Yeah.
Have you sold any companies yet?
Nope. Nothing.
Would you be interested?
100%.
Okay.
Because we've talked about it in the past, right?
Yeah.
Where it's just like, you have to understand like having the formula of what you're going to try to sell. What you can't just sell any company, right? In a way.
Not all companies are sellable.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of like that's your plan of like, okay, I want to sell this company in the next 10 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how are you going to be able to do that? And we talked a little bit about that, so I'm kind of curious.
Yeah. So in that case, the things that were frustrating me at the time, honestly, I don't think I would be frustrated with, primarily because now I know how to solve those problems. And it would there's so many things that escalated into like massive issues that now they would be like very minor speed bumps and we'd move around them so quickly. I just didn't know. I had very little entrepreneur experience, even like 5 years in, just because we didn't have a network group and we were just winging it and there wasn't a whole lot of people to learn from at the time.
What are a couple of those examples real quick?
I think with Mikey and I can only speak from my experience, but I know that we were both very frustrated with each other. I felt like I was doing the majority of the work. And this is a very common thing with partners where we were 50-50 and I felt like I was doing like 70% of the work, 80% of the work. And it's very frustrating to get, compensated 50% when doing 70-80% of the work. But from Mikey's perspective, he probably felt the same way. He probably felt like he was doing 70-80% of the work. But that's the point, is that that's so common because we just didn't communicate about it. We didn't talk about it effectively. And it ended up, driving a wedge. We're still friends, but there was a time where it was like, we were not friendly to each other.
Is that something that like also made you like a huge reason you sold?
Yeah, I was just tired of it. I was tired of dealing with the drama and all the bullshit and whatever. And so as part of it was a partnership issue and part of it was the business issue. And I think part of the business issues rolled into the partnership issues. All very solvable things because they're all super normal shit that every clothing brand goes through and almost every partnership goes through. We just didn't know how to didn't know how to deal with it.
Right,
So it's funny, like even looking back as an adult, an life experience 34-year-old, we're both still acting like fucking babies. You did this, fuck you.
I was gonna say, because like, dude, there wasn't anything, right? How it is today with like networking events, like groups and like,
what there might have been. I just didn't know anything about it. So which makes me think it didn't exist.
Yeah, right.
Or it could have just been. I think probably the truth is it probably existed just on a much smaller scale. And also we weren't looking for that. And to be honest, I don't know if we would have been open to it because both our egos were very tied in the company, very big. We're very, I'm right and this is my way or the highway type thing. And when you have two people that are like that, there's going to be some conflict. Like, you can build some big shit, but you're going to have some tumultuous parts of that relationship too. But it ended up working out. I sold my half to one of our employees, and they went on to build it even bigger and better. And it's cool. They changed it quite a bit though. So like, I feel like I was a lot of the flavor of it because I was doing all the designing. So a lot of the style in the original years came from me. But a lot of the person I sold it to was a better businessman than Mikey and I at the time because he'd already run a golf business. And he's very good at the mechanics, very good operator in the company. So he was able to put structure into it, which is probably really good for Mikey because Mikey was, love him, but he's not that good at structure. But together they were able to build it really well. So it worked out really good, I think. And it was cool to be able to see that grow and scale and build and be like, fuck, that's awesome. Like, I helped start that. So that was cool. Interesting part about selling a company though, because that was the first company I sold, and then I ended up selling, the kettlebell company, and I want to say like at least one other clothing line that I started, bought and sold. A couple other ones that we were partners with, and then bought and sold a few. So probably like 6 clothing lines altogether that I've either built, bought, or sold.
Damn.
And the kettlebell line, and maybe it's like your first kid or something. I don't know, but I would imagine.
I would think so. It's like your baby, right?
Especially like your first one where you go all in and it's a new experience. And
right.
It's just so emotional to build something like that because you're really giving your heart and soul and your time and your energy into this thing that you're bringing into the world, this vision out of your mind, and you're seeing it live and breathe in real life, and people interact with it, and it gains this like, kind of life of its own. And it's really cool to see that, not that it compares to a child, but I imagine there's still a part of you in it, and you can see that. And when you let go of that, or when you choose to let go of that, it can be difficult to process.
Mm-hmm.
Same way where like, I think a lot of people do something at a high level where like they're, a professional athlete, or they're, high level military guy, or they're a rock star or something like that. And then they end up leaving that. And a lot of that their identity has been built into that. And then when you take that away, sometimes it's kind of a negative space where if you don't overlap it, and like, because you are the baseline of everything, and whatever you do should stack on top of that. Mm-hmm. But if you don't baseline you, and you like compress, like this part is the thing and this part is you, then when you remove that, you have a negative space and you feel like empty with that. Mm-hmm. So I never felt empty when I sold any of the companies, but I guess Forge was the only one where I was like, I wish I'd done it differently. Right. But that feeling didn't come to like a year or two later, because the first 6 months I was like, dude, I'm so fucking glad I'm out. I'm so fucking glad I'm done. I'm doing other shit. I'm so happy with that. Like, I don't have to deal with it. It's awesome. But it was a couple years later I looked at it and I'm like, man, you know what? Maybe it's because I started to wise up and I started to realize like, yeah, you know what? I probably could have done a lot of things better. Been more mature about a lot of things. And
do you think you would have held on longer in the aspect of like what you know now? Like, fuck, I really could have.
I don't know, man. I really enjoy doing my own shit, but I think we could have moved the needle at least 10 times more than we did in the 5 years if I'd known what I know now, mm-hmm. Because we have, a lot of experience with clothing brands now. But also there's no way to get that experience back then unless you do all the work.
Right.
And especially with industry, with working with so many different brands, we accelerate our learning because we don't just see our own problems, our own solutions, but we see all the brand's problems and we see all the solutions. And when you see that many things, you can start to notice patterns. And you're like, okay, this problem occurs 95% of the time. This solution works 85% of the time. So now, you've got 87% of the clients who have that problem. We can immediately solve that issue for them and then move on. And I think if we had that in the beginning, we wouldn't have ran into a lot of the roadblocks and we would accelerate a lot faster. So it's not that I wish I'd held on longer. I just wish I'd done a better job of making decisions and prioritizing things when I was actually in it. But it's cool to see it grow big, but also I just like doing my own shit, and I like building. I like building stuff.
Right.
Once it's running, I'm kind of bored with it.
Yeah, like I think whatever. I was thinking just like Rob Dyrdek just builds and then lets him go. But in my mind, like I want to know, like, all right, you sold the company. Now what? I think most people get the idea of like, oh, go buy a Lamborghini. You like buy it, like you have all this money now. It's like, no, it's different in every aspect. But like, what do you do? Do you take a week break? Do you not take a break? Start a new company?
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody. But I do think it's important that you take a pause and really allow yourself to reset, because it is a part of you that's leaving, or you're leaving a part of yourself behind. And anytime you do that, whether it's a business, a family relationship that you're separating, or a personal relationship that you're separating, you do end up leaving a part of yourself behind. And it's very important that you kind of reset your self-awareness and figure out who you are now, because people normally change every 3 to 5 years. Like you become hopefully a more evolved and a better and different person. So what you wanted 3 to 5 years ago when you first started the company may not be what you want now. So it's very important that you take a reset pause and figure out, okay, what did I learn from this? Who am I now? What do I want out of the next 3 to 5 years? And that becomes, okay, what have I learned? What are my assets? What are my capabilities? What type of problems can I solve? Where does that fit in the marketplace? Who's the client base or the customer base that needs this? And through asking yourself those things, you can kind of figure out what your next step is going to be. And that's how I decided to do industry. Was I built and sold a handful of apparel lines and a kettlebell company, and I was like, we have pretty good experience with this. Like, it's worked and it's scalable, and we have solutions to a lot of problems. And let's see if we can apply this to other apparel brands. And we did. It worked really well. Helped one of my friends scale from 100,000 a year to like 4.5 million.
Damn.
In 3 years. And it was cool. And it was all our shit that like was working.
Right.
It was good. Well, our systems and processes, but he did all the artistry. He's really good at branding. So it wasn't like we did the work. We just kind of helped, guide him in his direction.
So you sell a company, right? Like Forge or anything like that. What you had, apparel. Then you go into kettlebells, which is a completely different market, right? Yeah. So like, what's your advice? Someone like just sold their things, like going to a completely different niche and things like that.
Well, it's a different product, but it was a similar market because we were heavily involved in CrossFit at the time. And kettlebells were used a lot in CrossFit. So the market was very similar. So we'd already had a whole bunch of people that knew about the brand and that knew me from the CrossFit community. So I was like, cool, what's another product that we can serve the same community with, which I was a part of too. So then I just built that. So it seems like two totally different products, and it is, but the marketplace, especially the time, was very similar. So it wasn't a whole lot of like, I already knew what the market wanted. I knew how to present it to them. I knew what the performance features were that it needed to have. So it was easier than, even though it's a totally different product, there were a lot of similarities in how we were bringing that product to market.
Any stories from like your businesses that you sold, right? Or like people that sold where it's like they got really depressed and like completely changed like how they were, like just an aspect of more behind of what it really is to like sell a company.
I think there's an initial sense of relief, because if you're looking to sell a company, there's usually a reason for it.
Right.
And sometimes it's because you're just fucking over it, or you're frustrated, or you're tired of dealing with it, or like there's a reason that you're not keeping it. And usually when you sell the company, that resolves that issue. But the problem is, whatever else, the great thing about having a company or a business or being an entrepreneur is you're so fucking busy all the time, you can cover up all the extra shit in your life. And then when you get a little bit of money and you have time, you're like, oh man, wow, this other thing I've been repressing for years actually is really fucking annoying. I need to go address this or handle this. But it's nice to have those breaks where you can kind of take a step back, reevaluate yourself, and look at what you want to do next. I think Demon Bells was the only company I sold where it was, what I would say like a mildly significant amount of money. The rest of them was just kind of like, change here and there, but it wasn't anything significant. Demon Bells was the first company I sold where it's like, okay, I can take a little bit of a breather and relax and pick my head up and look further down the road and see, okay, what do I really want to do? And it was selling that company that really made me realize, because I was after a whole bunch of other apparel lines. I was like, okay, I really do have experience in this, and I can really help, other apparel brand owners. And so that was where I stepped into, creating Industry Threadworks, because it was exactly that. It was like, what kind of skills and capabilities do I have? Who does that help? And how can I, craft that into a service or a product or a business that is going to be useful to people?
Did you get paid out with a huge check?
All the companies that I've sold have been, been cash, just a check, which has been nice, but that's unusual. They're all pretty small amounts, so it's fairly easy to, for a company to write a check for that amount. If they were like millions of dollars, it'd be like, well, it's rare to get a check for like millions of dollars, especially depending on the size of the company. But yeah, a lot of companies will be sold with like some cash and then stock options in the new company, or payout over time, or they want to like say if it's a bigger company, it's like say it's doing $50 million, they might, and say it's valued at $50 million, they might give you a check for $10 million and say, hey, we'll sell it, we'll buy it for $50 million, but we're gonna give you a check for 10 now, and then you have to stay on for the next 5 years, and every year you get a check for 10 million, and you have these performance metrics you need to meet. And then if you don't, or the company flounders or whatever, like you only get what you have so far. So if you don't meet those performance metrics, you don't get the full asking price. If you sold it for 50 million, you might not get 50 million.
Oh shit.
Or yeah.
Like option type thing.
Yeah. So there's the deal, and then there's the structuring of the deal. And sometimes it can be vastly different. So you can sell it and be like, I sold it for this much, but what you actually put in your pocket, it can be, wildly different sometimes.
I think it's crazy where you're like, oh, how'd the structure of the business go? Like that's the thing with business. Like you can watch on Shark Tank, you can listen to other people's podcasts, like some of their shit, but it's business, right? Mm-hmm. I could sell my product for $100 for $10,000 to one person if I wanted to, right? Yeah. It's my fucking business. Mm-hmm. I could schedule a deal to like sell my company just like that. I've never heard of something like that, so there's so many different ways to go about it. That's why like side tangent, I was like, business is crazy.
Yeah, and selling a company, like how you structure it is, there's, like I said, there's just so many ways to do that. But I do think it's like, assuming that gets done, I would also recommend that people spend probably more time than they think they should on due diligence on the buyer and the deal. Because I know when you're in it and you're like, fuck, dude, I'm over it. You're just trying to get out. And you're like, I don't fucking care. It's real easy just to be like, fuck it, I don't care. Just take whatever deal's on the table and fucking go do something else. At least I'm like that. I'm like, dude, I don't fucking care. When I don't care, like I don't fucking care. Right. And I'm just like, I'm already moving on. And I think I would have been happier about the outcome if I had been a little more patient and done more due diligence on the start. Like for instance, the kettlebell company, I met the guy I sold it to, seemed like a nice dude, seemed like he had his shit together, went out and met the suppliers. I'm like, cool, you got it, you're handling it, like give him the package, all my stuff that I prepped, the things that I was going to change and move towards for the next, 6 to 18 months. And he's like, yeah, I got it, gave me the check cleared. I'm like, cool. And then he totally fucking burned the company to the ground. It just, I don't know. And I was trying to I was texting him, hey man, do you need help? Like, I'll come help you. You don't have to pay me. I'll come help you for free. And then he kept fucking it up. I'm like, can I buy this back from you?
No fucking way.
Yeah, because he was just completely burning it to the ground. Not on purpose. He's just, I think, even though I was totally upfront and honest about what he was getting into, because I wanted it to succeed, I think he underestimated how much work it was to run a company, because he'd never run a company before. He'd always been an employee somewhere. It's like, oh, I'm going to invest in this company and blah, blah, blah. It's not what you see on TV. I just buy a company and then it spits out profit. No. You have to actually know how to run the fucking company.
Why'd you get rid of Demon Bells? Was that something where oh, this guy's going to give me a good amount, so I'll sell it? Or is I'm kind of...
I have a limited bandwidth of time for things that I'm interested in. Usually it's 2 to 4 years on the top end. Mm-hmm. And then I'm over it, which is funny because that's about the time that I handed off CEO position to Disney in this company. And I just know that about myself. I like the building, and once it's rolling, I'm kind of bored with it. And I just got tired of it.
When
I wanted to go do other shit.
When you say rolling, does that mean you're sending out a certain amount of orders a month? You're like, okay, we're doing 10,000 orders a month, whatever. I'm kind of bored now.
It's where it's scaling and growing, but it's got momentum and it's stable, right? So you don't have to like, oh, I got to build a fucking website. Oh, I got to build a funnel. I got to do all this shit. I got to create, like when you're not creating the infrastructure anymore, when you're just creating like new products and new drops, that's where it's like it's pretty stable and it's growing, and you have like reliable way to grow it and build it and maintain it. Yeah, that was the only one where it gave me time to like look around and figure shit out. But I do think, like I said, due diligence is key when you're buying a company, but also when you're selling it. Like, make sure, that's a mistake I made. I should have sold the company to somebody else. I should have sold it to On It.
How long's oh yeah, I want to talk about that. How long is that usually turnaround date? Can it be from a couple hours to like a couple weeks of like
due diligence? I mean, some of the smaller clothing brands I've sold were like just a couple emails back and forth, and change over passwords to the stuff, and hand them a thumb drive full of like all the designs and AI files and everything they need. And that's pretty much it. It's done. Like, you don't even need like paperwork for it. You just figure out like what assets they're buying, and then, close out the or dissolve the LLC in whatever state that it's in, and have the other person absorb it into their other LLC. But yeah, it can be as simple as that. Like, some of them we didn't even have like actual legal agreements. We just had email to be written out. We put all the stuff that would be in a legal agreement in email, and that was our legal agreement, which actually holds up in court. People don't understand. They don't think like, well, I never signed anything. Like, you agreeing to terms, and then you establishing terms and then agreeing to them and then abiding by them. That is a fucking legal document, whether it's created by an attorney or not. It's a legally binding agreement. And so, and especially some of these smaller ones, like it's just not worth the money to go pay an attorney $3,000 to $5,000 to go do it. It's like, whatever. And then, but the bigger ones like Demon Bells, about 3 months of due diligence, which is mainly just me showing him all the books, flying out to meet the manufacturers, doing all that stuff. But it was mainly him, and I should have been, doing some due diligence as well. But I just didn't know. But yeah, I would have sold it to a bigger company. I would have sold it to somebody else because I want to see it succeed. It's like your kid, dude. You send your kid off in the world. You want to make sure they do well and succeed, not just fall on their fucking face. It's frustrating.
Because it is your kid, dude.
It kind of is, yeah.
Like when if someone gets offended, it's like, it's not a kid. Whatever, I don't care.
It's not, but it kind of is.
Yeah, dude, it's a baby. Like man. But yeah, I can't imagine. Like, I want to eventually, dude. I want to have my business, right? Build visionary what we got, and then like sub accounts or subcategories of what we can build and like sell parts of that. So I definitely want that, and I can see how it's just like, wow. I remember like starting my room, like starting this funnel, and then now it's making $10 million a year, and then now I'm gonna let it go to someone else. Like, oh, that's kind of sad, Like,
But it's kind of like choosing new parents for your kid.
Oh, Jesus.
That's kind of weird, yeah.
The adopted child. Oh,
yeah.
You're going to go over here now, Billy.
Like, hope it goes good, Johnny. Good luck.
I taught you well.
Don't feed him after midnight.
Get him wet.
Yeah, man. But yeah, I think if people were to do those things, like a little more due diligence on who they're selling it to, make sure the deal is structured correctly, make sure the valuation is accurate and correct. And then once it's done, really take a minute to pause and figure out what they want to do next. I think people would have a lot more satisfaction with the whole process, because those are things that I struggle with. Looking back on it, like, fuck, I could have done this better. I could have done that better. But if I had done those things, I think I would have had a lot more satisfaction in a lot of those, except for the reset. I feel like I did that pretty well. I'm super happy with building industry and love what we do. So I think the reset for me was good. And then buying the Lambo was part of that too. And that launched me on a whole other like self progression where I thought it was cool. And then I got the car and I met people with like real money. I was like, oh, that's what real money looks like.
Do you not feel cool anymore? Because that sucks.
I know, man.
Like, do you not feel cool? Like after you get, you're like, oh damn. Like,
no, it's a weird thing where like I still felt cool, but at the same time, it was kind of soul crushing and soul expanding at the same time to realize how much bigger some people really are. So it's cool to see like fuck, that's what's possible. And it was amazing, but also it's very frustrating. Like, that's what's possible, badass. I don't have any of that. Fuck, I'm back on the fucking bottom rung. But I think that's like anything, dude. You get, if you want to be a big fish, you got to find bigger ponds, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's no fun being the biggest fish in the pond, in a small pond. You're like, okay, great. I'm really cool in high school. Like, great. I'm really cool in this zip code. Like, okay, great. Like,
Sick.
it's a big world out there, bro.
Yeah, I know.
But also too, I think a lot of people get caught up with comparison and projections, and they're thinking that they're not as good as other people. And it's very normal. But the fact is, sometimes you're not as good as other people at things that they choose to be good at. You know, if somebody's like world class at something and you're just starting out, fuck, of course you're not gonna be as good as them. They've been doing it for 30 years. Like, there's no way you can expect to be as good as they are without putting in the time and the effort. But I think people overemphasize the weight that carries, and it really is just an unnecessary burden. Like, just go acknowledge that they're doing shit at an awesome level and get inspired by it. Like, dude, that's fucking rad. That's so cool that exists and that they're doing that. I wonder what I have in my life that I could be as good at within my, niche or my frame.
Mm-hmm. Damn, man. Well, that's good.
I feel like I'm missing something, but
I feel like we went to like you create, you find, you do your due diligence, you actually sell, then you actually take the time away that you need to go, So I think it's just like, I'm excited to like go on that journey, when that time comes, you're like, oh dude, like.
It's all about that creation process, man. Like, that's why we have that saying for industry, create, destroy, is because that's what necessitates moving to the next level. Like, to jump to the next pond, you have to destroy the old pond. Like, we have to destroy who you were in the old pond. To create a new version of yourself, you have to destroy the old version of yourself. So it's this constant progression. And it's a wheel, dude. And if you get going on and you get momentum, it is really hard to know when to get off. You're like you said, like, how do you know when you're good enough? How do you know when you're happy? And that's why self-awareness is a superpower, because you have to be aware enough to know, hey, you know what? I have enough money now to make me happy, and whatever that point is, whether that's a car, a house, a relationship, a number of kids, or whatever it happens to be. If you can have that number in your head ahead of time and know when you get up close to it, like, okay, this is what I said, 5 years ago I was going to stop at. Do I want to stop now? Am I good? Can I let off the gas, get off the ladder, and enjoy, the next 3, 5, 10, 50 years, whatever, at this level? And sometimes you just got to take a break and, relax and enjoy your relationships or your family and your time off for, 3 months or 3 years or 5. And then, but one thing I have noticed is that people who achieve, especially in entrepreneurship at a high level, they always say they want to get off, but every single person I've ever met who does sell it, and they never take a break longer than like 6 months. And they're like, fuck, man, I got to get back in it, because you missed the game. And when you get good at it and you enjoy the game so much, when you don't have the game, that's worse than selling a business, because it literally is a part of you. Like, when you play your favorite game and then you're not allowed to play that game anymore, the fuck do you do? And a lot of people as well don't have any like hobbies or interests, or like business is their main hobby and interest, and everything else is like far second. That's kind of how I feel. Like, I kind of like cars, I kind of like all this other shit, but I really like business.
Yeah.
And if I had to, even if I sold my company for like, I don't know, 100 million, 500 million, like, I'd just find the next thing to do. Right. I'm not gonna go sit on a beach and, fucking. I think
it's one of those things too where you collected. It's not easy to sell a company like that, right? It's like you accumulate those skills over years, and then once you're done with it, it's kind of like, well, what am I? I'm so smart. I like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Like, you can't just not use those skills anymore. You
build a race car, you want to go fucking drive it.
Yeah, we're done.
Well, yeah, that makes sense, man. It's 34, wrapping up, selling businesses, starting to get your shit together. I feel like all my early 30s, just starting to get my shit together. Fuck, dude.
Because you're saying in the beginning, it kind of like feels like it kind of merges all the the 30s.
That whole like 5 years from 30 to 35. I had to do the math and figure out, because there's so many things that happen, but they all feel like they happen at the same time, but it's a 5-year span.
How many? Oh man, how many since when you're 27 until 34? How many businesses did you sell?
Oh, that was the first one.
Okay, so at 34.
Yeah,
okay.
I was 29 when we started that.
Okay.
It was 2007. So yeah, that was my first one.
Okay.
I was just after 10 years in the military. It's like,
so do you have to like, what consider something like to sell, right? If I wanted to make another company on the side and like what I get, it makes 20K a month, 25K. Is that something I could sell?
It depends on if somebody could step in and run it. But if it's a skill-based business and you're the one doing the work,
right,
they can't replicate you. They just be buying a job. And so the valuation on that is basically so low, it's almost zero.
So what does that mean? Is it more, you think it's like better product-wise than service-wise?
It depends on what it is, but if it is a service, then you need to have people under you who can execute and deliver and fulfill that service. And then and that's why it's important if you want to build a company to sell, you have to make sure that you build yourself up into an owner role where you're no longer the manager, you're no longer even the leader, you're hopefully no longer even the CEO. Then you're in a position where you can sell it because somebody comes in, they own it, but they already have a CEO, a COO, a whole production team, like they have everything in place. But if you don't have that, you don't have the systems and processes that somebody can buy, they're just buying like a job, the work that you do every day, you know, and it's really tough to sell those because nobody's going to know the ins and outs of the business like you do. So they're going to have a really hard time running it. And most people who are going to buy a business, especially for a significant amount, understand that. So they just won't buy businesses that aren't like fully built and ready to go. But there is like a tier level where I would say probably, I mean, depends on the business, but roughly 5 million would be the point where you start to get enough infrastructure where somebody could come in and realistically, like they'll still have to do a lot of work, but they could probably like buy it, you know? Yeah, a business is like 20 or 30 million, probably a lot more infrastructure than, you know, a $2 million business.
That's just like interesting. Like in my mind, I'm like, oh, just buy a company and then like put it, like attach it to your name if you already have a company. I don't know. It's just kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's why you got to do due diligence and look at the P&Ls and like the real numbers, because sometimes the P&Ls can mask a lot of shit. So you got to peel back the onion and figure out, okay, what are your real cost of goods? What's your relationship like with your suppliers? What's going on in the back end? Like the whole, especially now with COVID, the whole supply chain is a huge, huge thing to look into because a lot of companies look good on the surface, but when you start peeling back the layers, they're got a lot of fucking problems.
Damn, man. Well,
all right.
I'm gonna sell a company by. What's my goal? I want to sell a company.
There you go.
You know, I don't want to sell my main one. I definitely want to sell a company by 32.
Yeah, most of these companies I'd already started. Like I'd already started Dima Bells when I was I still had like a year and a half left with running or with being involved in Forge. So I was actually running both companies at the same time. Most of the companies that I've had, there's been at least some level of overlap, whether it's 6 months or whatever. Industry was the only one where I was completely out of everything for like 3 months before I started something new. But every one of them has been like side project. Industry is the only one that became like full-time.
It's crazy.
Side hustling, bro.
Yeah, man. I know.
This is really tactic though. Like just side hustle the shit out of things until you figure out what you're truly like world-class good at and then go all in on that.
Yeah.
Because if you go all in too early, you're like, fuck, man, you're not good enough. You're dealing with a whole bunch of shit. And then now you're not working within like your wheelhouse. And then you get unhappy and frustrated. It's like I said, self-awareness is a superpower, bro.
When did you, I got a question. They got to wrap up. When did you know you were world-class at apparel?
When the things that I thought I knew started to work in other businesses. Where we had my friend's company and he was doing $100,000 in sales a year, but he was really struggling. And we came in, I just went over there and so looked at all the stuff. I'm like, well, yeah, dude, this is a really unusual.
What kind of company? Is it apparel too?
It's an apparel company, yeah. I was like, this is a really unusual relationship you have with your website. They're taking like 15% of net profits, like, or gross profits. That's insane. You need to drop that fucking right away. You're way overpaying for product here. This fulfillment operation is like a mess. Like, so I just basically here's what we were doing at Forged, and here's how it applies here. And it really worked really worked extremely well for him. It was just basically applying the infrastructure stuff that I'd already, like the systems and processes that I developed when I was running Forged, and building that out. But also in the process of helping him, I honed my own skills. So I learned a lot and further developed my systems and processes. And then we're working with more clients and got them a lot better. And then over, the last 7 years, now I would say it took us probably 4 years to get where I would say we're like really world class at it. But now, like the last 3 years, I can honestly say like there is nobody better in the entire world at scaling apparel brands, because we have literally the most information on that, because we work with the most apparel brands. Nobody in the world works with as many apparel brands as we do. It's freaking insane sometimes. Like, talk to clients and like, oh, this guy, oh yeah, we know that owner, or we know this owner, and we work with a lot of them. But the ones we don't work with, we still know a lot of people in the apparel world, even if we don't work with all of them.
Damn.
But yeah, that's where I was like, okay, we are. I'm comfortable saying we're world class at that.
That's what something I'm working on, because it's like I've been doing it for a long time. Video, I'm world class. I don't know.
Yeah,
I've never been that way. Like,
well, you need to compare it with everybody else.
Exactly.
Like we still fuck shit up. I mean, we're not. We still make mistakes. We still have shit that goes wrong.
We fuck shit up.
Yeah,
fuck shit up.
My God, we do. But that's just very normal, dude. Like, especially the apparel industry is extremely difficult to achieve perfection. It's unrealistic to achieve perfection. So your best is like, okay, how close to that can you get, and how can you maintain that consistently? If you can do that, it's really, really good. But in fact, perfection with what we do is an impossible goal. Well, it's impossible to achieve. It's a great goal. If that makes sense.
Hell yeah. All right, man. Well, episode 34, selling a company, right? What to do after, in a way. The whole process, due diligence, man. So
know your company, know your buyer, and then know yourself.
Know yourself. If you guys are watching this, please DM us, me or Ryan. And guess what? Just DM us a question and we'll put you on the show. We'll put you on the show.
Got it.
Yeah, man.
All right. Shake and bake.
Shake and bake.